We're live.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is about time to get our show on the road. This is the Educational Programs and Services Committee. We have got a full house tonight. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do before we get started is we go around the table, just say who we are, what we do to make it easier. I'll break the ice and go first. I'm Mike Elliott. I'm chairman of this committee, and I'm a school board member.
Chris Sacred, middle school principal.
Emily McCormick, I'm a school board member who got stuck in the deeper, sorry.
I did. You were just watching the Phillies.
I was not, no, but I definitely left. I left like very little time to spare, so sorry about that.
Dana Hemser, school board member.
Todd Amser, assistant high school principal.
Jeff Freeze, principal at Herford Elementary.
Art Vigilante, principal at the 4-5 Center.
Kim Bast, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Rob Carpenter, high school principal.
Jen Sanovitis, High School Assistant Principal. Amy Goyle, Supervisor of Special Education. Carol Giblin, Director of Special Education.
Andrea Freed, the Assistant Superintendent.
Ladies?
Melanie Cunningham, Board President.
Interested party.
Peg Pennepacker, Board Vice President, Upper Perk High School, class of 1976. Member of the Red Hill Band.
I knew you were going to say that.
Hey, can you tell us when the Red Hill Band is playing next?
Next year.
We do. All right, you're the last one.
And I'm Jim Ruff, Director of Technology.
Fantastic. Okay, so before we get into our building data presentations,
We do have some.
we don't normally address our visitors, but if you want, we can address our visitors and say hello and welcome. We don't like to say who they are specifically.
Nobody wants to come since COVID. It's like.
Well, everybody live streams it, or everybody watches it later, which is what we hear from a lot of people. So, but we do have some members in the audience tonight. Thank you very much for coming. It's nice. For those of you watching at home, welcome. Later, this is all tape. Okay. So before we dive into our building data presentations, I'd like to get an approval of our last minutes. Approval of this, approval of September 21st, 2023, Educational Program Services minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Having a motion and a second, do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. All right, building data presentations. Dr. Farina, would you like to lead this?
Sure, I absolutely would love to. So every single year, what we like to do is offer the board and the community an update based on what our data over the summer, our data processes at the beginning of the year, looking at our benchmark data, and our building goals. Very often, school improvement, requires everyone to sort of be aware of what our process is. And so this meeting, every single year, I invite all my friends to come, and they love it. It is the only thing we talk about at this meeting just because I think it is, it's appropriate to ask questions after the presentations. And this year, we're going to start with something very unique. We're going to start with the high school.
Ooh.
So we are going to ask Dr. Carpenter to lead off. His colleagues are really super excited at elementary because we always make them go first. But now, we'll turn it over to Dr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Dr. Farina. So today, like Dr. Farina said, we're going to start off. I'm going to talk to you about our building data and also go into our building goals and our TSI, give you a TSI update for you. So we'll start with our Future Ready Index. This is preliminary for to be released from the state pretty soon. This is a preliminary look here based upon our 22-23 data last school year. So this is overall proficient and advanced. Now this is all our students who are, again, proficient and advanced in English, algebra, and bio. So start with English here, 77.8. Score proficient and advanced. Statewide average you can see there below. To give you a little bit of perspective, The 21-22 school year, we were at 78.7. Moving to algebra, proficient and advanced 59.6. You can see the state average. And also to give you a little bit of perspective, 21-22, we were at 48.4 proficient and advanced. So a nice little jump. For bio, we're at 60.6. Statewide average is 58.9. And also to give you perspective, 21-22, we were at 26.3. I'm sorry. Yes. All right, so Mrs. Bass asked me if these are the bank scores. So let me give you a little perspective here on, again, overall proficient and advanced. So a student could take the algebra 2 times. He wasn't proficient the first time he took it, second time he takes it, he's proficient, and we're going to use that, the state will use that better score. All right, also, we have students who are taking algebra in middle school, and they are scoring proficient and advanced there, so it gets banked. That score is attributed here as well. Okay.
Dr. Carpenter, what is the statewide 2033 goal? What is that meant, like?
The statewide, so the state creates a goal for us here for English. So
By 2033?
yeah, so by 2033, they want everybody to be at 81.1.
It's just a 10-year guess? Okay.
And that's created for all grade levels, age levels, all content areas
Okay.
by the state. I guess when they would be happy.
If in 10 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Carpenter, you said you had the improvement in math went from 48 to 59 over 1 year?
So in 21-22, we had 48.4 proficient or advanced.
Okay. Is there anything, and maybe you'll address this later on in your slides, but is there anything that you would say, oh, that's the reason we had that success or that bump?
I don't have a specific answer for you there.
Okay.
I would just say, remember their bank scores.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
It's not like this was the group who took the test. at
Right.
one. So that's a little bit harder
Okay.
to pull together
That's
because
what I
it's a
was-
bunch of scores.
Again, a student who takes it a second, like wasn't proficient after Algebra 1, passed the course, went to Algebra 2, became a stronger algebra student, took it again and was proficient.
Okay.
So that could be the case there. So this slide is, again, overall, all our students, PBOS growth. So students who are on the left meeting the expected growth, we see 90% of our students in English. The statewide average is 70. To give you a perspective, in 21-22, we had 100% of our students exceed the growth. In algebra, we have 100. 21-22, we have 100. Statewide average statewide average here was 75. Statewide average here is 74.9. And then science, with our bio, we had 50% of our students achieve the growth score. We're below the state here. And in bio last year, we were at 82. So obviously a dip there for bio and our PBOS growth.
If there is a question about, we always talk about 2 metrics, right? Just as a reminder, achievement and growth. Achievement is the percentage of kids who meet the standard, the content standard. Growth is year over year, each kid grew, but it might not be exactly the standard. Does that make sense? They demonstrated growth over time. So there's 2 ways that they look at student achievement. One is standards-based and how close they are to that, and the other is how much did they grow from 1 year to another.
So in science,
Yeah.
not so good.
No, we only had half of our kids. Yeah, that's why it's red. Disappointing.
Now, I asked you with the last one, now I asked you with that one. Any idea why?
Not particularly.
Okay.
That's the hardest keystone.
Right.
That is, I mean,
Right,
like,
we've had a
as a
couple.
high school principal, that was always the hardest
Well, how are
keystone.
we gonna find out why it's happening?
So we'll talk a little bit about that. And remember, this is all student data, right? So what the TSI plan is just about special ed students. So you're looking at all student data. So, you know, I won't interrupt you anymore, but we're going to talk a little bit, and there are processes that are being put in place to ask those very questions. How did, you know, what happened, number one?
I mean, it would be, you know, obviously diving into those things is really great because you can see that in ELA and algebra, like, boy, that's really nice, right? Like, so how do you swing that over to biology to have those successes there? So just to add on, you know.
Next slide is overall our graduation rate. So graduation rate is always a year behind. So in this, when you're looking at PBOS and proficient and advanced, you're looking at the 22-23 school year. For graduation rate, it's always a year behind. So we're looking at the 21-22 school year. So for that, we're at 92.6. Statewide average is 87. And to give you a perspective, for the 2021 year, we were at 91.1. 5-year rate, you know, for students who don't meet the graduation rate in 4 years, they're earn their credits, they come back, and 5th year, so we're at 95.2. Statewide average is 89. To give you perspective, 2021, we're at 90%.
What were we at?
90.
Okay.
Yeah. So we increased the 4-year from 2021 from 91.1 to 92.6, and then the 5-year 90 to 95.2.
When was the last time we were
When was the last time we were at?
Not-
100?
I don't remember being not
So-
not since you were here.
Overall.
Well, I go back a couple more years. 1920, we're at 87.7. 1819, we were at 91.7.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I was saying, I don't ever remember being 100.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not in your lifetime.
Or anywhere.
This is our career standards benchmark. This is meeting the chapter 339 expectations. So last year we were at 94.2. State average was 89. The goal there is 98. Perspective 21-22, we're at 97.5. 2021, we're at 88.8. So this is something that we continue to work with, especially with this year with our college and career coordinator to help us organize and achieve these artifacts.
And if I could just make a note for the viewers. When you see the star and it says federal, those indicators are what get pulled when we're looking at TSI designations, school improvement designations. So if you don't meet those thresholds every time it says federal, they extract that and map it out. We don't actually have that yet. I'm a little surprised.
Mid-October, they said.
So,
Also mention, you'll only see 3 colors: blue, which is exceeding expectations, green, which is meeting expectations, and red, which is needs improvement. So that's what those 3 colors that you'll see when it comes to those benchmarks.
Thanks, Mr. Ridge.
Yeah.
And now we're going into our students with IEPs. So if you remember, we're on TSI for 3 reasons. Graduation rate for students with IEPs, the achievement for students with IEPs in combined English and algebra, and then growth combined English and algebra. So this is a percentage of students with IEPs who scored proficient in English, algebra, and bio. So this year, or last year, excuse me, we're at 23.3 for English, Algebra 1, 17.5, Bio 17.1. And you have, you know, the last 2 years there as well.
And that was an insufficient sample in 2021?
Yeah,
Because of COVID?
yes.
And nobody was here.
Everybody went through COVID. That's an excuse.
Yeah.
Sample, because those
Yeah, that's in the,
kids weren't.
that's right on the Future Ready Index.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess I'm going to ask the Mike question. Do we have any idea why we're?
Well, that's, so what we're doing, and I'm gonna allude to that in the TSI action plan, we're gonna look at, I'll talk to you about our steps in the action plan, you know, analyzing our data, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Is there a number you're aiming for with these?
Yeah.
Percent? I mean, obviously higher, you know, and I don't mean that.
Couldn't have said it 100.
Yeah.
Right. But the state creates cut scores. They
Okay.
created this cut score for us. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what that was with the combined ELA and algebra. Excuse me?
Combined was 36%.
Okay.
That's combined.
Like the average of the two.
Yeah, this is just the achievement portion.
Okay.
So,
This, somebody asked today, that the state does not give an average for students with IEPs. They don't break it down like that.
Okay, okay.
Here's our PBOS growth for students with IEPs. 50% ELA, 80% Algebra 1, 74 Bio. And you see the last couple of years as well.
What the hell happened from 2021 to, we went down by almost half?
Well, also, don't you have to factor where the kids come into? Like, I mean,
For
we're
growth,
talking about
yes.
growth.
Is that
Like,
because?
Sure,
is
but
it like a-
yeah, but I think the story, you know, what I always say is, so it takes where you were, the instruction you had over the course of the year, and then did you grow? So if you have to ask yourself, only 50% of the kids grew from the instruction they received in ELA over the course of the year. That's,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
you know, not even, so you would say, you know, what is the number? It's everyone. You should benefit from coming to school, right? That's,
Yeah.
so like, you know, those numbers are low,
Okay.
which is, you know, really, this is what TSI, but remember, this is not our TSI data. So, but they will look at us again for TSI based on this data.
Okay.
TSI is from this.
Is this same students, or these are just the year?
No, they're not the same.
So they're different kids?
Correct.
It's not like they're going backwards though, it's just not, they're not
It's different.
attaining the
It's
growth
different
that
kids, it's
is.
a different cohort, but it's, you
They're
know,
all different, yeah.
they expect you to kids to grow, right?
Different classes.
Mhm.
We want to be in the blue, if you remember what Art pointed out and with our growth. We want to be in the blue.
All these numbers are in blue. Sorry.
It's a bold choice.
Sorry.
Wishful thinking. right?
So here's our career standards benchmark for students with IEPs. The last 3 years, we're at 80%. So that's something we need to work on. We think we have an idea here. So some of our students who go to Western Center are not taking one of our classes at the high school called Freshman Prep, where we provide a bunch of, most of our 339 artifacts, so they're not getting that. So we have to work on making sure that they're getting those Smart Future activities. Graduation rate for students with IEPs, 74.4 in 21-22, and the 5-year 86.0.
How are we comparing in these, or do you even know? I mean, I know statewide average, but just like locally, regionally, what do we look like?
Well, I haven't looked at that. That's something we can look at on the other schools' Future Ready Index and drill down. To give you perspective, the statewide average, this is again statewide overall, not special ed, but statewide for 4-year in 21-22 was 87, and for 5-year was 89.
So unfortunately, they don't break out the subgroups in statewide numbers for us. They do it just as a whole. We can go in and look at individual schools, but we have to look at each one.
So for the TSI plan here, for one of the indicators, the combined graduation rate with 4 and 5, right here, when you average these two, it's 74.1. And when you average these two from 21-22, it's at 80.2. So again, we don't know what the cutoff scores would be for the state for the 21-22 year. And that brings us to our TSI plan, our priority statements here. So the first one, we want our teachers to analyze their assessments and make instructional decisions to help students. That, in a nutshell, is the first bullet, without reading it directly to you. And the second bullet is using our MTSS process, fully functioning MTS process, we will identify students who need help earlier and create action plans to help support those students. Those are our priorities moving into this school year.
Question.
Yes,
First bullet,
yes.
will they have access to resources to help them do that? And I mean face-to-face with directors or principals or
Yes.
departments?
Colleagues, your own colleagues,
Colleagues.
they're doing that at department meetings. We are there at those meetings. We have MTSS meetings, Dr. Farina, Carol, Amy, Kim, they've all been there.
Second question, why has it taken the high school so long to latch on to the MTSS process?
Good question. To be honest, I mean, we've had bits and pieces of it. It's a struggle for a lot of high schools, to be honest with you. I've talked to many
I don't care about
principals.
the high school, I care about us.
I know. I'm just saying, it's not, the high school schedule is not as conducive. We had to do some strategic scheduling to free up some teachers, be a part of our MTSS team. And the TSI, to be honest, was a nice kick in the pants.
So I think, we spent a lot of time in previous, when this was different, a committee by a different name. We went through an entire assessment literacy process, and teachers were instructed to put their assessments and link it and add standards to them. The high school still has not done that to some regard. So, those are some little steps, like when you hear from other levels, you're gonna hear that those processes are done. It allows them to reflect in a timely manner on student acquisition of skills. So there's a lot of pressure now to do the work that, our other teachers have done and have been using that data for several years. I mean, we said, back when, we're behind the 8 ball, and some of that is, we said it for a reason years ago, because we can use that data, right? Standardized assessments is a snapshot in time. Kids may not feel it until the very end, or it's not really relevant, but this is, the reason that's a priority statement is because we want them to use their instructional data to make decisions for kids. So how does this happen? If you give a test, you don't do well, you never go back, what happens, right? So, we're trying to be more strategic, but it's a lot of work. You all heard this in other committees, a lot of complaints about Lincoln.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember those conversations. So, I suspect sometimes it's a challenge to get that ball rolling.
rolling.
It's rolling.
Yeah, I agree with Andrea that we are so behind the eight ball. I mean, we were doing data crunches at Perk Valley in 2000 when I was there. I mean, you know, come on. And Dana, Emily, aren't you embarrassed?
Very much. It's disappointing.
Graduates, I mean, it's like, come on.
So here are our goals. We're looking at our class of 2024, specifically students with disabilities. So the implementation of the MTSS plan and regular monitoring of their progress. We want 80% of our students with a disability in the class of 24 to graduate in the 4-year cohort. And we're also focusing on ninth graders. We want 90% of all of our ninth graders to be on track to graduate and earn 6.5 credits or more by the end of this school year. So obviously we want to focus on our seniors right now and then our ninth graders, because it's very important for our ninth graders to be on track so that they're able to progress with their credits.
So 6.5 credits, what comprises 6.5 credits? Like what kind of classes? Is that just your basic math?
Yeah, so like your core courses are all 1 credit.
Okay.
So your
I'm just
math,
making sure.
social studies, English, science, they're 1 credit. And then your electives. Your electives are half a credit. Art, phys ed, health, half a credit.
And I'm not sure if you remember from our spring meetings, when the building administrators were looking at their data, there was a lot of evidence that, you know, you could trace back the struggle for graduation and even performance back to what your freshman year looked like. And if you did not pass the class that year, it was very difficult for you to make that up, especially if you were a student going to the Western Center. So, you know, I think we've always heard the 9th grade year is really pivotal. So that's, you know, obviously we support the high school administrators in really focusing on making sure those kids are on track. Because we know how slippery the slope gets for kids after 9th grade.
So is there a plan then for the 10th and 11th graders, if we're concentrating on the 12th graders
Yeah,
and the
so
9th graders?
10th and 11th graders are also part of our action steps. You know, if they're off track, they're on our at-risk list, and yeah, they're definitely part of it. They're not going to be left behind. Here are our action steps. Analyze and brainstorm recommendations for tiered interventions based upon data, map, benchmark data, fingertip data, attendance data to identify at-risk students. Now, so that's for all, 9 through 12.
Can I ask you what fingertip data?
So the fingertip data is coming right from Linkit, and it provides, you know, just data at a quick glance. So we kind of put together with our MTSS team, our MTSS coordinator, like all their data in one place, so that just click the link and all the teachers and all of us can see it. So we did a lot of work. We're doing a lot of work on Tier 1 interventions, working with TLS to help us differentiate instruction. So we've got a lot of positive remarks on TLS and the PD there. Provide the at-risk list to all the staff to monitor progress and identify instructional strategies that may aid in growth and achievement. Teachers are also looking at their own grades, creating their own focus lists based upon how students are doing in the classroom. So this is being monitored on a weekly basis. Teachers will plan, implement, and document Tier 1 interventions used to support student growth and achievement. We've asked teachers to create interventions and communication logs based upon their data in the classroom and communicate home, you know, when necessary. administer and analyze beginning of year diagnostic assessments. That's our Lincoln benchmark. We also use IXL in English. We have some data there, and plan day-to-day activities. Analyze the beginning of the year assessment data to reassess the at-risk list and update the Tier 1 plans. So we ask the teachers to look at their data and plan for, tweaking their instruction to help students. Yeah, thank you. MTSS team meets once a cycle to monitor at-risk student data and progress. We've done that. We've had a lot of good work there. For example, we looked at our 9th grade at-risk list, and the teachers on the MTSS team reached out to those students individually and made a connection there just to help mentor those students and just to provide any type of help and support for those students.
There was also action planning, so kids were taking an active role in the meeting, setting goals. We moved some intervention, or will be moving some intervention periods around to give them the academic support during the intervention enrichment 40-minute periods. And so the feedback has been really good from the teachers and the kids. And some of the kids even acknowledged, I didn't realize I was at risk. And what does that mean? And so that definition of what an at-risk student looks like, that dialogue is really important for them. So it not only gave them a we're worried about you conversation, but it also provided them to have a connection in our building in addition to all of the teachers and supports we offer.
We have asked our special ed teachers to complete weekly reports of academic progress for everybody on their caseload. And when doing that, we've asked them to look at academic progress and reach out to parents when students are not performing appropriately, acceptable. Create action plans for all seniors who are credit deficient, and we gave you a hard copy of that as a sample there.
So this is really, Todd really developed this and implemented it, so I don't want to speak for him, but I will say that, Todd, if you want to highlight some of the work that was done.
Yeah, so what we did is we took our at-risk list, of kids that we had, both special ed and non-special ed. And at the beginning of the year, we met with counselors. I met with counselors and with Megan Smolinski, who's our MTSS coordinator. And we kind of put together the top section of this for students to look at. Okay, what classes have they completed? Where are they sitting at credit-wise? What are they currently scheduled in? What do they need to recover? We talked about what would their pathway to graduation be. So we looked at Keystone scores. So are they a Keystone proficiency pathway, composite pathway? Are they a Western Center student where CTE is going to be their pathway? Or are they going to fall in one of the evidence-based or alternative pathways? So then what we did is we looked at, okay, what do they need to complete? How many credits do they need to recover? And then we kind of created individual plans for how are we going to move forward to track their progress in the areas of things that they need to recover, and who's going to be responsible for those, how are we going to track that. And then after we had that meeting, then for our non-special ed students, counselors met with those students individually, explained this is the plan, this is what you need to do, called home, talked to parents. We had some parent meetings as well with that. And then for all of our special ed students who were on this, when we got to the plan of what we need to do and what that needs to look like, then we met with their case managers, went over all of this with them to kind of finalize that plan, and then we set up IEP team meetings with all those special ed students to go over with their parents and lay out with their case manager, this is the plan, this is what they want to complete, this is how we're going to get them there. Some students we feel we can get to complete everything on time for graduation and graduate on time in June. There are some students who the more realistic plan is, Okay, you might have to complete some things after June by the end of September of 2024 to earn that diploma, and some we're in a position where they'll need a full 5th year of whether it's credit recovery or we're bringing them back into the building. But we just track that progress as we go and continue to, adjust and modify as needed. So I meet regularly with counselors and case managers to talk about these at-risk students, and work very closely with Ms. Smolinski, who is implementing a lot of Tier 2 supports for some of these students to kind of help them make progress. And we just monitor and adjust as needed to help these students meet their goals. And we track everything on these at-risk sheets. The ones that you have probably have some notes at the bottom. I certainly anticipate that as we go, that will continue to expand as we have meetings and adjust the plan to kind of help support the students.
So ballpark, how many of these do you have?
Total overall, special ed and non-special ed?
Well, I mean, you don't have to.
Ballpark, 26-ish.
Across 9 through 12?
These are just seniors.
This is just seniors.
Yep. And then seniors, when we look at seniors, special ed seniors, there are 13 students with IEPs who have at-risk plans that we're currently working through.
And how many seniors do we have?
Total in do you know the number?
240 something?
So like 10%.
250? Okay, so maybe 10%.
In our
Ballpark.
general special ed percentage is what, 15%? Is that ballpark?
At the high school, we have 38 special ed students
In the class of 2024.
Okay.
So 38 special ed students in the class of 2024, 13 of them currently have at-risk.
Yeah, I have
at-risk plans. Yeah.
I'll show that in the slide.
And I think the long-term plan is doing this work for our current juniors prior to rolling into a senior year.
Yeah.
So we're ultimately like, we never want to do these, right? So that's the long-term goal, but I think catching them earlier, because we do have some work to be done to correct some of the other years. So the goal is, April, May, we're doing this work for the incoming seniors, so there's time for credit recovery over the summer, or we can kind of plan, long-term plan with them and have more time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I said it before when we talked about the action plan in general, but I would certainly anticipate that as we continue to fine tune the MTSS process and we implement that with fidelity over time, that we would certainly see less seniors as we move forward being at risk. So we'd have less of these senior at-risk plans because we are catching those students early. We're able to support them before it gets to the point where we're at this year. So
one would certainly hope, yeah.
Correct.
So those that can't make it in 4 years, is that just IEP kids that can do 5 years?
no, and any student would be able to.
They could come back.
Correct.
I think the challenge is when you're looking at,
But do they?
some do.
Some do.
Some do.
Yeah.
The challenge is, as Todd articulated, is when you're looking at kids who've been in high school 4 years with single digits worth of credits.
Yeah, how did it even happen? Yeah.
And how do you help them? Because that is a helpless feeling, I'm sure, for them.
Well, yeah, because the other question to all this is, we know, all of us in this room know it's not just the data. Like, it's the external stuff too. It's
the life.
the culture, the environment, the home life, yada, 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 and making sure they feel safe at school. If I have to hear from one more community person about bullying at the high school, I'm gonna lose my mind. So, I get all that gets factored in too, but we have to make sure that they
There's a
feel
lot of,
stable.
just to add to you, as everybody's saying, there's so many indicators that bring out the kids with 8 credits that are a senior.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not a very small portion of kids that do transition in, but we know those kids. We have an example of one this year, senior. How many credits?
Transfer in with 7.
7 credits, and is a senior.
Oh.
That is a small portion of it, but it is a piece. But when you look at the attendance, and then you look at the discipline, like, obviously there's academic struggles. Where does, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And then, as you mentioned, all the outside environments. It just, there's so many indicators that.
Well, I think it's important, sorry, just real quick, I think it's important, you know, when we talk about data and growth and all that, where we want to be, where we want to go, and what we got to consider, like, where the kids are too, like, when we get them. Like this, you know, kid comes in with 7 credits, like, you know, this poor kid, right? Like, you know, you want to help them, but, you know, obviously it's a very steep hill.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously we want to help as many kids as we can, but I think it's important to consider certain situations as well when evaluating.
So I think that the beauty, you know, I've had the opportunity to sit in MTSS and listen, you know, to Todd present the action plans and Jen and Megan Smolinski, who the high school now for the first time has somebody in that role to facilitate that, which is incredible. I mean, I'm going to say, you know, it is incredible. She is exceptional at that work and very responsive. And I think those are our realities, but we have to be able to know the kid's story before the end.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, we know that being a student transitioning, every administrator in this room will tell you, a kid moving in, it's never smooth. Everybody has a story, but you have to be able to, you have to ask the questions out of the gate before they get to 20, you know, where we're like, well, now what? So I think that the MTSS team at the high school, currently, they have designed a system to collect that information. It's very tangible, it's very observable, it's very action-oriented. Is it sustainable is the question, right? It is. It's, you know, they're doing a lot of work, the principals, the teachers, so that's, you know, that's something I want to highlight, that the things that, many of these things you see, they are operational. Do they need to be refined and reconsidered and sustained? 100%. But you can actually see it in action now, which is the first time. So.
Speaking of all those, the goals and the things we're implementing and stuff like that, you know, obviously a lot of great stuff up here on the board, and you know, we can see these charts in front of us about how they're tracking with kids and stuff like that. But how, is there like a data hub, like a main spot where you're checking to make sure that you're, you know, like, oh, let me make sure, is everybody getting these meetings that they're supposed to get this week? Do you have like a hub that, like, so if Farina or somebody wanted to pop in and see how it's going, like, monitor all of these on a weekly basis?
Well, we have shared folders.
Okay.
The MTSS documents are all on a shared folder.
Is there one hub though for like a high point overview sort of thing?
Well,
Yeah, you kind of did that head nod thing, that's a yes.
so yes.
So I'm that kind of person who,
I mean, I would assume that,
Andrea,
but I have to
also
ask anyway.
Like, we can't pull
we
that
can't pull it
spreadsheet
up because it has student names, so.
Right.
No, I don't want to see it, no, I don't, but
But she created a spreadsheet that really allows us to see the whole child. That's how I described it to my staff.
but do you have one to see the whole process that we're implementing at the high school?
Well,
Not
one
just-
that
not
you
just
see
on the kid thing.
interventions, you see the interventions that have taken place,
You see
For
the phone
the
calls.
kids?
for the kids. So you see their
Phone calls
self
home.
explaining.
emails.
Yeah.
But do you have, because all this stuff, like the analyze and brainstorm recommendations, provide that list, you're planning and implementing, do you have, for these weekly meetings and stuff like that?
Yes, they have, yes.
So I've,
Okay.
the principals will tell you there's 2 things that we ask for. Evidence that it happened and data that shows there was an impact. And those are the 2 things that I said, if you can do that, you have the autonomy as a building administrator to do that work in the way that you need to do that work. But those are the 2 things that, you know, Dr. Roach and I are going to ask for. Do you have evidence and is there an impact?
Yeah. Show me you had your meetings.
Right,
I
and
mean,
were
show
they
me
really
that you-
effective?
Yeah, what
Did they
happened?
get you where you needed to be? So the answer is yes.
Okay.
So you're seeing agendas and you're seeing departments meeting with their agendas. You're
Yeah, I mean,
seeing,
bullet lists are great, but also it's
Right.
nice to know that
So you're seeing the
you're
data.
tracking your, you know.
yeah, so we're tracking it, we're going to those meetings. There's department partners who teach a common course. They're meeting to review assessments, to make determinations on strategies. So we're seeing that work.
Okay.
You know, the finger tip data that kind of highlights all of the progress, where they've come from, where they're at. It's all linked into this format. And this is a growth process. So we put something and then we go, ooh, like that wasn't fabulous. So then we change it and we modify it.
Cool.
And so it's a great group with a lot of skill set who is comfortable saying this isn't working. It's not easy to use and it's not collecting the right data.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Last two bullet points, pathway to graduation, check and connect mentor program. Our mentors have been trained in November and we're working on getting permission from the students, that ninth grade students who we identified to be the mentees. So we're kicking that off.
Nice.
And the last one is the develop and implement classroom walkthroughs. We have over at the high school 50 walkthroughs that we have done. We started that a few weeks ago as part of our TSI action plan.
And how do you give feedback after those?
I speak to the teachers right there and show them the form. And we have also emailed the teachers, right, wrote sticky notes, that type of thing. So we're still working through the walkthrough form itself and the use of Qualtrics. To be honest, we talked today about the need to tweak the walkthrough form.
Why is that taking so long? Because you gotta have documentation.
We have it, We have it, so we don't like, so what we do is, we did them together, and I'll say, I brought to the, I think everybody may have been like, oh, we don't want to tell Andrea this form's not effective, and then I was doing walkthroughs with principals, and I brought it to the table, I'm like, I can't, this is terrible, I can't use this form. I can get the feedback, the actual feedback is in their comments, that was the most valuable part. Us administratively looking at that data was a little more challenging to design professional development or do whole group stuff, and so we have it for what we've done so far. We think it needs to be better. That's essentially, and that was feedback from the administrators.
When do you think you'll have that better? When
I actually have a draft to send to the administrators
I
today.
just think we're losing time here.
Well,
We gotta jump on that. you
We're
know?
still doing the walk.
Yeah,
We're
they're
still
still
doing it.
doing them.
Yeah, but we gotta have that documentation.
So, and we're doing formals too.
Yeah.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, and just for the board members, FYI, and this is just my personal perspective, what I loved about walkthroughs, it's not a I gotcha moment. It's not you're going in to see a teacher and you get them for something. What the coolest thing for me was seeing great teaching. Just observing really great teaching, and that was rewarding as, doing walkthroughs. As little time as I had to do, and, assistant principals in the room, you know how it is. It was just rewarding to go into a classroom and see really great teaching.
And they are getting immediate feedback. So we have been, using the walkthrough form and then taking what we see, and then, I can tell you in several cases I've said, I saw this and this and this, and then questions I might have, and then that opens the dialogue. So the feedback is there. It's just I'm glad Dr. Farina said it may not be as user-friendly as we would anticipate.
And do you offer, like, I saw this, this, and this. Did you ever consider this, this, and this?
And that is on the walkthrough form.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there's been conversations about that. And we go at various times in a 77-minute period. So, we may not catch the really important stuff that the walkthrough form is asking, because some of that, it depends on where they're at in the lesson in that 77 minutes.
Right.
So you might see, collaborative work, but you're not sure if it's purposeful in terms of grouping, so then you have to ask follow-up questions.
Right.
So it does trigger some good conversation.
Okay. And teachers are receptive?
They are. Actually, I was told I was a distraction because the kids wanted to talk to me more than they wanted to listen. So I have to work on that.
You have to give yourself
Guys
a
or something.
Yeah, I know.
Or
Or get there first.
or turn into a service animal.
There you go. There we go.
No crocodiles,
Alligator.
No problem.
alligators, them either.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
and
in the
not to digress, Rob, but are the other buildings doing walkthroughs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Elementary? Yeah.
It's actually a further refined topic for tomorrow afternoon's professional development session
Okay.
at the K class.
It's gotta be a hoot.
Very excited.
Come on over.
So within the TSI plan, for both goals, they've asked us to create benchmarks to meet the overall goal. So if you recall, our goal for our students in the class of 24 who have an IEP is to hit 80%. So right now, if we end the school year, we will have 65.7% of our students with IEPs in this class of 24 will graduate in the 4-year cohort. So this is what, Todd was talking about. We have 13 seniors with IEPs with action plans. But we do feel confident that this number will be higher and that we will meet our 80% goal. Same thing for the 9th grade goal. We have our target for the end of the first quarter at 75%. So if we end right now and grades stay the way they are, 86.5% of our 9th graders will be on track to earn 6.5 credits. And our goal is 90.
We sort of talked through high school. Does anybody have any questions? Other questions? We can bank them and move on to Chris at the middle school. Feel good about that?
Anybody?
All right.
Okay.
All right. So our state achievement data.
I could do this.
I realized I was doing them. I don't know who was doing them. Okay, so this is our state achievement data in PSSAs for the middle school, and you'll notice that we are all in red, and I'm just going to ask you to bear with me because this data was interesting to me when you look at some other data that I'm going to show you. So we were in red, not meeting those targets. We were above the state average in those. In our growth, we were above the state average and had some very nice scores there in ELA and math. And science, not biology, it's just straight science for us at the middle level. 84 was our growth score there. Our attendance, 94.3%, just a little bit above the statewide performance standard, but definitely above the statewide average. And then our career standards benchmark, 99.6%. We actually exceeded the statewide performance standard.
And that's
that
okay.
one. We're
That
okay.
is great. Don't say it like it's cheese. It's awesome.
Well, I wish that was ELA and math and science, but we'll take the career standards. All right, so this is ELA achievement and growth. So this is what the state score that you see in those previous slides, this is kind of what they report, right? So it's the same grade, but different students. So we're comparing apples to oranges. And I always want to preface that with my staff because the next slide I'm going to show you compares apples to apples. It's the same students over time, which I think for us is more important for our programming and interventions and all of that. So, but if you just look at this overall, you can see we had, some higher years in 17, 18. Obviously, then there were some dips, but we are, rebounding a little bit, staying the same overall last year in ELA at 61%. So we didn't dip, we stayed the same. But I'm going to talk about how I think that we can address that. In this slide, this is where we're comparing apples to apples. And cohort versus non-cohort, we look at the cohort group. Those are students who have tested all 3 years, like they've consistently tested, where the non-cohort might include students who moved into the district or moved out of the district and only tested once or twice. So we focus here on the cohort. But, so for example, in sixth grade, you see grades 4, 5, and 6. So we can see that they were at 57% as fourth graders. They went to 61% and then 63% as sixth graders. So we're trending upward there. In seventh grade, you'll notice they have grades 3, 5, 6, and 7 because they didn't test in fourth grade. So that's the reason that there's nothing there for that. So they kind of stayed steady at 61%. And then our eighth graders went up a percentage in ELA from 65 to 66. And then again, there's the overall at the end, it says 62 to 63%.
How many, can you just go back one, I'm sorry.
Yep, I'm sorry.
How many students, or I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are the majority of our students falling in the cohort group, or are the majority of our students falling within the non?
No, the majority are definitely in the cohort group, yeah.
Okay, so just
I would say the non-cohort are your anomalies where kids just didn't take one of the tests, maybe
Right.
they were. I mean, sometimes we had a kid who had a concussion, so they didn't test 1 year, like that kind of thing.
But more than average, would you say, like more than half fall within the cohort group? I guess I'm just trying to understand if those,
Yeah.
are those the students?
Yeah.
More than that?
Yeah.
majority.
I would say
Okay.
like,
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
I don't know, I'm gonna say like 90%
Yeah.
probably.
Okay.
Overwhelming majority.
Okay.
So then what we did is we broke our ELA score down by the assessment anchors to see what areas did our students show growth in and where were our trouble spots. And so one of the things that we really looked hard at is the makeup of the PSSA test and what percentage of different categories were scored the highest. We had focused on vocabulary because it was one of the areas that we were not doing as well in prior years. And what we found is vocabulary is not weighted that much high of a score on the overall test. TDAs, which was good for us in sixth grade, but whoa, our eighth graders and seventh graders, those are obviously big red flags. TDAs count for 25% of the score on our PSSA test. So in looking at that, one of the things that I remember when I came here in 19, I forget, I'll get to it on here, was we did really well on TDAs that year. There was a big curricular focus on that prior to me coming, and when I was analyzing that data, I remembered that, TDAs were really, really high. We scored very well in them. And so doing some background research in that, looking at our students' open-ended answers, we found very low percentage of our students who scored in the 12 and 16 point category of those open-ended. I actually had it linked in here, and then I realized that there were student names in there, so I quickly unlinked it. But that data was very helpful for us to know, like, whoa, our kids are not able to answer those questions and gain the greatest amount of points in that category. So this has become an area of focus for us this year. And that's basically reading and writing, responding to a written prompt, being able to provide textual evidence. So obviously a very important skill in life as well. So math, again, here we're looking at same grade, different students. So this is kind of what the number that the state is reporting. And you can see there's definitely been some nice growth in math. Way back before COVID in 17-18, our scores in math were not very high. I'll show you a spreadsheet of our scores over the past 8 years shortly. But you can see that sixth grade here, we've definitely been growing there. A little bit of growth in seventh, a little bit of a dip in eighth, but overall from 41 to 45%. And you can see last year it was 33 to 41%. So we've definitely made some nice growth in math.
What do you attribute the growth to, Chris?
We worked a lot in math when I came on. Believe it or not, some of it was test-taking strategies, but we also did a lot of work on aligning our curriculum with standards too, when I got here. But helping students tackle that open-ended question on math and helping them gain the greatest number of points, demonstrating for them how to answer that question, what gets them 4 points, 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, encouraging them to try to get the greatest number of points that they can on that open-ended, because when we pared down and looked at some of that data in math last year, we saw that our students, again, were not earning the maximum number of points that they could on some of those open-ended questions. So
So
math
it really
is
is
unique
learning,
because
learning how to take the test. It really is learning how to take the
honestly in math,
Both those
because
things.
here was the other thing, like our assessments didn't model what a PSSA, like, do you remember? Your math tests weren't multiple choice.
Yeah.
So that was another skill that we worked on with students, is understanding how to tackle that multiple choice problem in math. So we modeled a lot of our assessments with multiple choice PSSA style question to help our students with that test taking, as well as giving them the skills they needed.
One moment, and I don't mean to digress here, but Kim Bass, I was bringing this up. Is reading apprenticeship still alive and well?
Well, we do a lot of the same strategies, not necessarily under that guise, but it's golden lines and, yep, backward abstract.
I'm such a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it,
Talking to the text, using the sticky notes.
yeah, it taught me how to read at the age of 50, so it was great. It's never too late. It's never too late.
All right, so then moving on to math, this is same students, different grades. Did I do the wrong thing? Same students, different grades. Oh, I didn't put the right slide in here.
Just blame Jim.
I know, but I really want to show, well, I'll show you this. So this is the analysis of our math with the anchors that are tested. You notice there's, I have to point out, there's a lot of green on this, a whole lot less red on this than there was in ELA. I want you to look at number systems, because this is something that I know elementary and 4-5 have really been working on. And so to see 12% and 25% growth in number systems is huge, huge. So I need to point that out and give credit to elementary too, who's been working on some of those skills to make sure our students are ready there. So this is a difficult one to kind of look at too. In 6th grade, they test on expressions and equations, but in 5th grade, those students come to us that their anchor is algebra in 5th. So this test changes, math test changes a little bit when it comes to middle school. So it's not something that's consistent throughout. So with math, we are implementing a new curriculum this year, CPM. And so our goal this year in math is to continue doing some of the things that we've been doing, as well as implementing this new curriculum and hoping to raise our overall scores by 5%. This is science. We were at 68%, so you'll see that we've grown the last 3 years from 52 to 68%. Now, this will always be the same grade but different students. This test is only given in 8th grade, so I don't have any type of historical data there for you.
I like how you use green, you know,
Yeah.
like science
Well,
colors.
That's Lincoln, not me.
Like algae and.
But our color code for science in middle school is a green folder and a green notebook.
That's pretty clever. It's really clever.
So science analysis, we notice a lot of red here in Earth and Space, and that's taught in 7th grade. Sometimes there are not a whole lot of questions on the science PSSA in Earth and Space, so we're digressing that one a little bit. That's a little bit harder to pinpoint exactly, but we've made some nice overall growth in science. So when you look at that first slide and you see that we're all in red and we haven't met that growth and our scores look a little yucky, I think it's important to look at this 8 years historical data of where we've been scoring and where we are scoring now. So that 45% in math looks horrible, but it was our highest score in math in 8 years.
I'm just gonna, I love when we have these deeper dives like this. So I really like this slide because I think it does give a lot of perspective, because this is what we were kind of talking about earlier, like, where are we, right? And in seeing this here, you can see, yeah, 45 kind of stinks. But when you look at where we were, where we had been, oh, it's actually, oh, we're making progress. So there's growth there, which is what you're looking for.
And then there's that year in ELA where we were at 70%. That was 17, 18, and that's where there was a lot of work that had been done on TDA. So, you know, now we're at 61%, and I feel pretty confident that we should be able to grow that at least by 5%. It'd be nice if we grew it even more, but with some of the things that we have in place, I feel pretty confident that we should be able to at least get that up to 66%.
The way you're breaking it down, you know, to go back a couple slides, you're looking at how you're doing in each section, the TDA and stuff like that. Is that a new attack plan to be successful?
Yeah.
All these things?
Well,
Okay.
I think we had that going into COVID, which is why our score was there, right? And then I think COVID hit and we kind of like lost that focus.
Totally understandable, yeah.
And so and then we made some decent progress, 59 to 61, like we were seeing some growth, but when we like leveled out from last year to this year, it really caused us to kind of dig a little bit deeper and recognize that TDA could really be a factor that could help us boost our score.
Yeah, no, especially if it's a heavily weighted part of it. I
Yeah.
mean, not that you want to, I love how you said we want to teach them to be successful at the test, but also give them the skills, right? To kind of, you know. But it's true, like, you know.
Well, the test is how we're measured.
Yeah, so. Right?
You have to kind of do some things to the test.
Absolutely.
And science there, they had 2014 and 15, they were at 68%, then, you know, dipped and back up there again. So I think that this is a very informative piece of data to kind of, like Mike said, let us know that like 45% looks pretty crappy, but on the other hand, it's been our highest score in math in 8 years. So there's a lot of credit to the teachers and the work that they've done in trying to implement.
And to keep reevaluating and keep moving and just don't get complacent and settle in.
No, it's.
You improve, but keep
So
going.
you'll see
Keep going.
on this slide, I mean, it's a continuous role of improvement. So you're using that, you know, all of your data, building class level data, developing those action plans, the interventions that are needed. We're using the TLS strategy. New this year is we're involving students in setting SMART goals. So through our child study team meetings last year, we found there was a lack of motivation on students' part to really engage, take ownership for their learning, and so we thought that this may be a good way to kind of address that and have them be accountable for tracking their progress. So we're having them set a goal for themselves in each of their core content areas. It's a struggle because they don't quite comprehend what a goal is, and so we'll see how that goes, but that's something that we're trying to kind of help motivate them and make them take ownership in their learning. So we're continually monitoring you know, what we're doing, and our MTSS action plan spells out very clearly what we're doing with the TDA work, working with students on cold writes, how to unpack the prompt and answer those questions. We're putting in place some graphic organizer type things. I don't know, what do you call rages, or what do you call that? Graphic organizer, to help them with their writing so that when they go to tackle that prompt on the PSSA, they kind of have this rage, it's called rages, but each letter stands for something so that they kind of know how to attack that. I think that's going to be super helpful for kids. So I kind of skipped over the goals, but I kind of talked about them. So looking for 5% with that TDA score and hoping to move more of our students in the 12 and 16 point category of the scoring of that. And then in math, through the implementation with CPM and trying to hang on to some of the other things that we were doing, we're looking for a 5% overall achievement score to get us up to 50% in math.
Does
Any
anybody,
questions for middle school?
any board members with any questions or anything like that?
No, not at the moment. Just an update, it's 1-1 at the bottom of the 7th, and that's all.
Thank you.
But in between, I'll tell you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. 4th and 5th grade center. I'll walk you through some academic achievement data at first, and then I'll get into growth data. It won't be combined, it will be separated, and then into what we're looking at in terms of focus areas for both of our academic departments, whether it's math or ELA. When it comes to straight achievement data, according to the state, we have met our target. However, it's certainly not an area that we're satisfied in because we're not exceeding. And how can you be happy when 47.9% of all of your students in mathematics are proficient or advanced? So although we are meeting the state target, there's obviously a lot of room for improvement, whether it's in ELA, math, or science. This slide is pertinent to both 4th and 5th grade from the 22-23 school year. So it's not separated out by 4th or 5th, it's all 450 or so students. This breaks out ELA first. Up top is 5th grade. The last column highlights percent proficient or advanced in 5th grade. Below is 4th grade. It's longitudinal, so you have from 2019 through 2023. On the right-hand side is everything upper perk related. On the left-hand side is the state average. Separates out between 5th and 4th grade. To us, it's important to look at it longitudinally, in terms of what we are doing at both grade levels. And the special number that we're really looking at is trying to get back to those pre-COVID numbers, which would be prior to 2020. Those little boxes on the end, just are a quick highlight. I'm not going to talk yet a lot about growth, but this group of students, when they were in 4th grade, 51% were proficient and advanced. This group of students in 4th grade, when they were in 3rd grade, 51% were proficient or advanced. So when they're entering our building, there's certainly room for them to grow. We are making growth over that course of the 2 years, but again, there's lots of room for improvement.
So in 5th grade, there was a slight drop from 22 to 23. But in 4th grade, there was a slight increase.
Correct.
Okay.
Different students,
Yep.
same test. Those same students are this box here. So
So both improved in
this
that
group
regard.
is right here. The following year, this is where they were at. So when this was presented to our staff, it's important not just to look at longitudinally, but how's that cohort or that group of students doing as they move forward? Are we making a year's worth of growth in a year's worth of time?
I mean, we don't have 2023 state scores yet, but to take the
Correct.
59% compared to 2022's advanced and proficient, we've done better than
The state
the
average.
state in
Yes.
that regard, and again,
Right,
for 4th grade as well.
correct. This breaks down ELA, anchor achievement, for the 5 anchors that are listed, as well as the 2 different types of text, literature and informational. It gives you, I don't know why it starts with 2017 below, but it's essentially 2020/2021, 2021/2022, and 2022-2023. This helps us to really break down, first was our focus area, TDAs, text-dependent analysis, you heard Chris Siegfried speak a lot to TDAs. Was there improvement in our student scores based on that focus? And then secondly, where does our focus need to go? You know, if we've done X, Y, or Z to adapt and modify what we're doing instructionally to support the development of TDAs, you know, where are we now lacking? And as you look at this within ELA, I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb that yes, we did a great job here, but we obviously missed the boat right here in vocabulary acquisition and usage. So later on when we talk about ELA department and where they're focused this year, we're not going away from TDAs, but we are making sure we spend more time on what we're doing with vocabulary development. Further, you know, when we go through our day-to-days with our staff, you know, there's 100 slides of data. TDAs, when it's really broken down, although it shows 75%, we broke it down further into what specifically the children actually scored. And what we saw was a lot of growth. Students could score 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. We saw a lot of students going from a 0 to a 2, but not getting to the 3 and 4 yet. So again, there's room for that development. Improvement's been had, but it's not still to the level we want. And that's when you really start, I know you mentioned earlier how much you like looking at it, but that's when you really start getting granular about the data and what it really means.
So Art, what do you do to push it?
So it's a continuous improvement process, right? So I'll get into a little bit later what ELA specifically is doing for TDAs. But what we did in terms of implementation last year, we identified the issue at the beginning of the year and started working on it. But the implementation of more opportunities to practice and analyze text for TDAs didn't begin until, you know, say that November, December timeframe. Where it's already been identified, now we're making sure that there are opportunities for those types of writing assignments throughout every unit, beginning in the beginning of the year, as well as we banked examples to be able to analyze with students so they can see the difference between what it is that you did that earned a 1 versus what you will need to do to earn a 4. So it's more of an analysis for both the staff and the students. So when the staff is instructing students on what it is that you want them to do and expect them to do, you have a further understanding of what it is that they need to do to be successful. And at the same time, you're modeling that for students and displaying for students those examples of work to make sure they see the difference between that proficient and basic, between that advanced and proficient and that advanced and basic.
A little bit, like what you said about math.
Yeah. So you'll get that in a little bit too. I'll mention later with math, with our evidence-based writing, which is your problem-solving questions. But we'll jump the gun here. I'll wait till we get there.
And it almost sounds like teaching you the test, but it's not. I get
It's not, because it's a style of writing that each and every one of us as employed individuals need to use. You need to be able to grasp a text and then be able to respond to it intelligently to others based on specific questions that are important within that text. And that's all it's asking them to do, to be able to use evidence from the text to respond to a prompt. Now that prompt might not be something that you and I find really important right now, but the answers are embedded in that text to be able to communicate to someone else. So if you think about you at your workplace, you know, whenever there is an assignment like that or a requirement like that, you have to be able to take that data or be able to take that text or be able to take whatever example it is and then communicate it out to others for whatever the prompt might be. So it's the same type of thing. So to some degree, like Chris was mentioning, it is teaching to the text, but it's understanding that that's what the state is saying is important. So we need to spend more time focused on what they think is important versus what we think is important, because it's irrelevant in the end.
I have a couple employees that could use that training.
There you go. Fits right in.
All that reading stuff, you know, like.
Yeah. So then when you go back to that too, and you look at it, the literature text versus informational text. Informational text, you know, is usually nonfiction related, right? So, and you're talking about vocabulary that they don't see frequently. it's not like a made-up story. It's something, you picked up a manual that, you have to fix the carburetor for your lawnmower. Do you understand anything that it's saying? And can you sound out the words to be able to put it together fluently, so then you can decide? So that's kind of what it's hitting on. Mathematics breakdown longitudinally from what we're looking at. Again, on the right side is Upper Perk, on the left side is the state. It is from 2023 back to 2019. The state does not have out the percent of students yet, advanced proficient and so on, like we do. To the right, again, is that highlighted box where those students were the year before. So in 5th grade, 48% were proficient in advanced. Those same students from 2022, 38% were proficient in advanced. So it's, again, the moment they enter the 4-5 center and the work that we're doing with them, is it making a difference by the time they leave us and head off to the middle school? Straight anchor achievement then within mathematics. And again, it highlights to us, although that we've made some progress in numbers and operations to the base 10, which oftentimes boils down to fact fluency, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. Science, PSSA, longitudinal data. I find that interesting going back to the ELA with informational text, because you think that it would be more of a struggle than within science, because it is informational text, but yet, students are doing quite well with it, and we're, that 81%, it's really good. I mean, that's really strong. And it's a credit to both the students and to staff who are trying. But you look back the last 2 years, it was around 78%, which is still really strong. And it's also interesting, the state averages are in the 70s. Whereas in the math, it was so much lower. So it makes you oftentimes wonder what it is that's being assessed and whether or not that assessment, just...
Or the assessment's a little easier in science.
Or is it the opposite in math?
Or are they a little too hard in math?
Go back to that math one.
Yeah,
Right here. I mean, the state average in math is 35%, 36%. Well, what? So a third of the students in the state can be proficient on a math test? That doesn't even meet bell curve. And everybody knows what the bell curve is. It should at least be 50%. So that's where it is kind of interesting to look at it that way.
Why do you think it's like that?
I don't have an answer. I mean, if it's me developing it, it's 50%.
I mean, I would think,
In
right?
theory, it's a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
It's a standardized assessment. It should be a bell curve. And now on the flip side, that 35 versus 76, that's probably too high. That should probably be coming down and more difficult, like you said. But it's a positive, we'll take it. State achievement data. We're exceeding expectations in ELA, math, and in science. So again, all the efforts that are being put in by both students and staff are certainly so being displayed in this. I still wonder about the science because there's not an assessment prior to 4th grade in science. And 4th grade is the only time they're taking the PSSA. So where's the growth score coming from? Because they didn't take something else prior to that. So interesting, but great job both in ELA and math. I won't go down too far with my rabbit hole and feelings in some of the PSSAs. But ELA cohort achievement. So same students, consecutive grades. Really important to us because it really shows the impact that the school in itself is having. So over here is grade 3, and then the following year when they're in grade 4. This is non-cohort students, so this is primarily students that moved into the building. This next group right here is students that were with us in the district in grade 3, then grade 4, then grade 5. And it's nice to see stairs that go up. Again, non-cohort students that primarily had moved in. And then this is if you put both grades together where they went from grade 3 to grade 4 to grade 5. So again, nice to see the stairs going on.
So, this is gonna sound bad maybe, but it looks to me like in 4, 5, and in 6, 7, and 8, we're giving the high school students that are meeting or exceeding the expectations. What happens?
So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take blame. And I feel it's important that K through 8 also takes responsibility. Most of the students who are taking PSSAs at the high school level are taking them in 9th and 10th grade. They've had them for a year. My math PSSA scores, 48% were proficient in advance. That's not 80. Our 4th grade scores were 46%. That's not 80. I'm moving students to the middle school where only 48% are proficient in advance. So no matter what Rob sees, it's then a reflection of what Chris sees, which then is a reflection of what I say, and then is a reflection of what Herford and Marble sees. So I look at it is that all 4 of these buildings are responsible for what they're seeing there as well. So we all have a part to play. We all have continuous improvement to make. And that's the important thing that I've also seen with data in this district. I haven't been here as long as Meg has, but but it is, 20 plus years of experience in this district, and the focus on data and continuous improvement, and that model has been, to me, a game changer and a shift, a paradigm shift within the district. We're all going for that perfection, right? We're all trying to get everybody 80% and above, and then ideally 100%. But that, that continuous improvement is all, I think, that efforts that go into constantly evaluating the data. What is it that our students need this year? Because this year's group of kids is different than last year's. And last year's is different than the year before that. They're going to have strengths, they're going to have weaknesses, and it's our job to do our best to grow them. So I don't know if it's an answer to your questions, but what I say to that is I'm as much responsible for what high school scores are as high school is.
Yeah, and what you're describing is the down there syndrome. It happened down there.
Right, you can't say that. Right, you can't have it.
But, and just for what it's worth, I often wonder if we, do we push our kids hard enough? Or do we just say, well, they're trying? And I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just saying, think about it. Is our rigor there? And you hear that word a lot. But it's
I'll even put a third part on that. Are we pushing them hard enough on the right things?
Yeah.
And that's a constant, that's something we're looking at, which, if I fast forward through all these data slides, and I'll do that quick: college and career readiness, attendance, meeting expectations 81.6. No one else has said it. That's the year of quarantine. So that's when we came out and everybody was going home every other day. That's the only reason why that's good, because it typically is blue. Our school goals constantly goes back to make sure that we're providing a safe and supportive school environment. That school goal will never change in my mind because it's paramount. And then it's followed by what you were doing with achievement and in terms of what you are doing to make sure that your students are growing. And so that's that individual student achievement through database decisions, differentiated practices. And that goes right back to what you were just saying, Peg. It's that constant evaluation of what are we doing both instructionally within our curriculum, and then do the assessments measure what it is the state wants us to focus on. And that consistent reevaluation to make sure that what we're giving to the children is, again, what the state wants us to focus on. And it has been a learning process, too, for a lot of teachers. Oftentimes, you get a resource. For instance, at the elementary level, it's everyday mathematics and math. That's the resource. And we think that the entire page, lesson 2.2, that the students need to know how to do every single math problem on that page. The reality is, they might only need to know how to do the first 3.
Why do you
So-
see that?
Well,
With the
I
reality?
also want to add in that we also need to go back to our standards and make sure we're teaching our standards. So there is no resource out there that is aligned specifically to the Pennsylvania core standards.
Yeah.
So what we need to do as educators, day in and day out, is go through our resource that we have, our curriculum that we have, and compare it to the standard and say, does this match? And sometimes it does not, because it doesn't exist. And so we're doing that work down at the elementary level because Pennsylvania has decided they want to do their own thing. And making sure that our resources, our curriculum, and our assessments are all standards aligned.
Yeah.
And that's a tall drink of water. That's a heavy lift.
But I think you can see the benefit.
Yes.
And so that work, I made the comment about assessments for a reason, because there is value to the work. It is a lot of work, but there is value to that work.
I mean, and we'll get there next, Jeff and I, but what our elementary school teachers are now tasked with is standards-based report cards. So really, I mean, we're really getting into what does this standard say? How are we assessing it? What does mastery of the standard look like? Is it mastered right now for the student? Because sometimes it's not, right? And then when are we assessing it? How are we reporting it to parents? It's a lot.
If this is what the standard looks like in first grade, then what did it look like in kindergarten?
Right, there's so
pre-
many moving
kindergarten,
parts.
second grade,
You know, we're not making widgets.
No.
We're not,
Okay.
you know, it's.
We're making kids
And then you're also trying to differentiate what you're doing, like
Exactly.
Mr. Fries was just saying, because if, there's a first grade room, you want them all to know what that first grade standard is, but there's some students who aren't ready for it that you need to prep them on the kindergarten. But then there's others that you are ready for advancement. So you want to be able to expose them to that second grade level of what that skill was.
And that's happening in an hour of differentiated instruction every day in reading and every day in math in each of our elementary classrooms. It's what our teachers are doing every day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you'll see some of that, and then math, just kind of going over our focus areas. They're listed there, highlighting a couple things. The 3 main areas: standards focus, differentiated instruction, just hit on it, building back fluency. That's understanding addition, subtraction, multiplication, and by 5th grade division. The basic facts and being able to compute 7 times 8 is 56 automatically without spending a minute working on your hands to do so.
Kids, I'm like, why are you using your hands?
Yeah.
And then the last one is, we started work on open-ended responses last year with those problem-solving questions, but you think about how that's built from fact fluency. If you have to read a page to be able to answer a problem, but yet your computation is going to be off right from the get-go, you're going to struggle on those. One of the things that we found, even with all the efforts we put in there, is that we have a lot more to do there, and more specifically to teach students the behavior of math practices. How to pull apart a text to be able to decide what it is they're actually asking you to do. And what we also found is the responses that we did create last year fit the unit. So if the unit was on fractions, guess what the response was? It was on fractions. Well, that kind of spells it out too easily for them. You have to be able to kind of mix it up, so to speak. So they're not going to know exactly, is this going to be addition because we've only been working on addition? Or is it multiplication because we've only been working on multiplication? So what is it in terms of an operation they might need to do with this particular problem by pulling the problem apart and understanding that each of those questions, the questions within there are embedded based on the context you're reading. Comes the ELA, starts right from the get-go again, standards focused, differentiated instruction. Again, fluency. 2 years ago, you heard me speak a lot about decoding. Our students are in a really strong spot because of decoding, because of Marlborough and Herford's efforts. We're now moved on to fluency. It's the next step. When we become fluent readers and are able to consume text at a quicker speed, then that next level would be comprehension. We're not quite there, but we can't not work on comprehension as it is already. And that ties in strongly with that vocabulary development. Because in order to read fluently, you also have to be able to read the words and understand what they're saying. and it all ties in together. The last part would be related to the TBH, evidence-based writing, and as Mr. Pennypacker mentioned earlier, is with teaching to the text. Yes, but that's also real life in terms of what we have to do with writing. Being able to analyze the text and be able to communicate out based on it. Any additional thoughts, questions for 4th and 5th grade? I apologize for
And
my
I
length. I know.
wasn't like inferring that that's what we were doing. I'm just saying,
Oh, yeah.
it is what it is.
You have to do that.
It's said the wrong way too often, you know? Because if the test is well done, then why aren't you teaching?
Yeah.
But it's important to, and I didn't think you said it that way, and I actually really like the way that you described it, because I think it's important to recognize, because a lot of people, if they don't, you know, we've obviously sat in a ton of these meetings, and obviously we kind of have a grasp of, and obviously you guys way more than us, you know, and I don't, but I think it's important to acknowledge that, because people talk about that at a basic, you know, two people in Weiss's talking. So I appreciate the fact that you brought that up and addressed it. I think it's important.
Well, if it truly assesses the standards, and if standards are really what children should be learning, then it's
like what she said, right?
What you should be doing.
She says, but you're also getting the skills, right? Which is really nice. I like that, by the way.
All right, Marlboro Elementary School is up next. So you can see here, similar to what all the other principals have already showed you, our levels of proficient and advanced in math and ELA, and our attendance. Not great. Again, 21, 22, lots of absences. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few moments, but we had 74% of our students proficient in ELA, and 76.9, let's call it 77, proficient in math. Again, we are only tested in 3rd grade. Jeff and I only administer the PSSA assessment in 3rd grade for our students. So we don't have, it is the first time that's given. We only have one tested grade. So
So we don't have,
colors are good.
Yeah.
so we don't have the value-added data,
Right,
the
we don't
PBOS
have
data
the
that the
data.
other schools have. We just get straight achievement data.
I can't imagine being a 3rd grader taking assessment tests.
They do great. They do very well. Yeah. So you can see here, there's a lot of bars on this, but this is our math achievement data by standard area, so similar to what Chris and Art have already showed you, our performance across all of the anchors in mathematics are here. Last year we focused, and I'm gonna, where's my, this one, okay. So last year, let me see if I can get, right here in operations and algebraic thinking, we focused on actually computation. That is, when we drill down, there's lots of eligible content under that area, but we drilled down and we really looked at fluency, computational fluency, and worked on that. We worked on the prerequisites to multiplication and division. We administered computation progress monitoring as well. So students were getting bi-weekly assessments on addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, as well as many of the prerequisite skills that build up to that. So our performance in that particular goal area last year was 72%. Medium and high, when you break out anchor achievement, it breaks it into 3 categories. It does not break it into 4, actually. So when you break out anchor achievement, it's a low, medium, it is reported to us by low, medium, and high, not advanced, proficient, basic, below basic. So that's why it says medium and high. So we had 72% of our students. That was our area last year. When you look at our area, I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but when you look at our area, we chose to focus on measurement and data this coming year. We were actually going to focus on numbers and operations, but as Chris kind of had alluded to in her presentation, when we looked, we did a deep dive on what is most heavily weighted on the PSSA, and numbers and operations and fractions is not weighted as heavily as in measurement and data. So I'll talk to you a little bit about why we picked that particular area. Our ELA anchor achievement. You can see we focused here on craft and structure last year as our goal area. So you can see right here, I think that says 69%. And we focused on that, when we honed in on that, we focused in on informational text. So we talked to our teachers a lot about text features, how we can use the charts and the graphs and informational text to really build their comprehension in what they're reading and answer appropriate questions. So that was our building focus last year. We were actually going to focus on vocabulary this year, and we had to go back to our staff a few weeks into school, and we again did a deep dive on the weighting of the PSSA. And you can see here is that you would think we would focus on vocabulary, which is 54% medium and high for us. However, it's only weighted about, there's only about 4 points you can earn in that particular area on the PSSA. Whereas if you focus on something like key ideas and details, which we were already scoring pretty high in, but if you can focus on key ideas and details and then we chose informational text, it will earn you about 22 points. So we had a really deep discussion with our staff about why we chose to pivot and not focus on vocabulary, instead focus on some of our bigger ideas there. Any questions about that?
So did I hear you say you decided that as a group?
So we decided it as a building leadership team. Our core team gets together and really does a deep dive on our data, and then we turn around this kind of data to our staff. But I mean, we went into our district breakdown of like how our achievement, our anchor areas are weighted and how we were performing in those particular anchors, and then looked historically at the performance of the district in each anchor. So we did a very deep dive and asked a lot of questions of Linkit in reflecting on areas of focus for this coming school year. So our on-track measures, so again, we have a lot of room to grow in our regular attendance. Not great at all. That, again, 21, 22. I will tell you that I was very concerned about our kindergarten and our first grade attendance last year. We do a monthly building leadership team, so I have grade level reps that come together with me and my counseling team, as well as my leadership team, so my coach, my reading specialist, and my math specialist. And we talk monthly about attendance, our building attendance trends. Last year, consistently, kindergarten first were of concern as a grade level. It was very interesting because 2 and 3 was not a concern last year, and now we are seeing, we've already looked at September's attendance data, and September's is great. So we're looking at it monthly. We had almost 100% of our students, we had like 95% of our students with very little absences. So.
Can you share what you think attributes to your kids?
I think that kids were getting more, to be honest, I think kids were getting more sick last year. And I think they just hadn't been exposed to, they were wearing masks, and so they hadn't been exposed
I was
to
thinking
things.
that when you said that,
And so they came to school and they got sick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna push that a little bit from a Herford perspective too, which, I think we got out of the routine of school too, and the importance of going to school every day. And I see that uptick this year, though, that sort of that refocus on getting your kids to school every day.
And along with that, with the all full day kindergarten, are kids acclimating to that okay? Or you getting the hang of it? They're doing all right? Was that a really good choice that we made?
Yes. I think
Well, no, I mean,
yes, absolutely.
We kind of got hammered a little bit about, it's too much, kids aren't ready for that, it's a long day. So Jeff, do you see that they're catching on, they're, kind of.
So for
takes
me,
time.
as a former kindergarten teacher, right? I taught kindergarten for almost 5 years, in a half-day setting where I had 26 kids in the morning and 27 or 28 in the afternoon, right? Those are kids from an at-risk situation, low socioeconomic status, kids that didn't come in with much in terms of background knowledge, letters, sounds, numbers, just life experiences, right? If I could have had each one of those kiddos in a full-day kindergarten classroom, that we would have been able to take them that much further, right? Take them out of those at-risk situations and get them in school and taken care of. So I think likewise in this situation, I don't think all of our students are at risk walking in the door. However, it's not just about the 6.5 hours of the day that they're with us, it's about what we're doing during those 6.5 hours. Okay, so yes, we want to use it wisely, we want to use it strategically, but we also want to keep in mind that they are 5, that they are 6. And our teachers, I think, have done, I wasn't here at the initial onset of full-day kindergarten, but from what I see is, and certainly, Allie, I'm sure you have your perspective as well, what we're getting at this point right now are kids that are even more ready for first grade when they walk in the door for first grade. And we need that. Again, going back to what Art was saying, if they're not leaving us reading by 3rd grade, then we know what the research says, not just in terms of being able to read to learn, but also their potential for high school failure. So that's something we take really, really seriously, and giving them that extra head start just goes that much further. And that conversation we were having about potentially having pre-K counts, bring it up, bring it up.
Yeah, I think there's now time to do things like social emotional learning. There's now time to, things that they didn't have time to do in half day, and now all kids have equal access. When you have a group of kindergartners who are coming in through in a half-day program, and then some are coming through in a full-day program, which was our model before. Not every kid had equal access to the same opportunities. Now we really have an equitable experience for every kid. And they're exposed to things like social and emotional learning and, building the routines of coming to school and all those things. It takes a lot of time and work, so.
Just want to piggyback on what Jeff said about research in 3rd grade reading. You'll notice this slide is called On Track Measures. The Future Ready PA portal uses really attendance as a measure of future success, as well as 3rd grade reading and 7th grade math.
Mm-hmm.
They think how students score in those particular grades and subject areas has a very strong correlation to their success later on. So when you look at the portal and you see this reporting category of on-track measures, that's what it's referring to. Allie's is gray rather than another color because it's the same as last year. That's the only other time you'd see it on red.
Well, it would have been nice to know that
You
earlier.
didn't give us that color code.
I never saw it.
It's all confused.
It says gray, in the key, it says gray is the same as last year, hasn't changed. Or it's not reported, like you saw one out there that says it's not reported.
I think it's fine.
Mine was definitely not. All right, so just to put that statement in perspective, I'll go back here. My proficiency scores last year in ELA were 56% proficient or advanced, and in math were 43% proficient or advanced. So, yeah, we jumped leaps and bounds, which I said I was going to do in front of all of you last fall. So we have Dibble's end of year data from last year coming in. Let me get my percentages up here. Coming in last year, Dibble's is our early literacy assessment that we have recently started, in the past 2 years, have made the pointed decision to give the assessments to every single kindergarten through 3rd grade student 3 times a year. And we give them all subtests to really help us hone in on where kids might be struggling. So in the beginning of the year last year, 58% of the students overall in all of our grades were meeting benchmarks. By the end of the school year, which you'll see over here, 86% of our students were in the green or the blue. So 86% of our students were meeting early literacy benchmarks. And then as we head into this year, it's very similar. So 58% was our number coming in. Last year, this year, we have 61% of our students down here coming in meeting benchmarks, so the green and the blue down here. This is a breakdown by grade on the left over here, and these categories are called intensive, strategic, and core and core plus. So our goal is to have as little red and yellow as possible across all of our grades.
What are the little boxes in comparison to the longer rectangles?
So the little boxes are actually how many students fall in those categories, right there. Yep, 32 students, 35 students, 26 students, 4 students. Yep, and then the percentages that align with that. Yep. And then our school level map data in math, so this is all of our students. Again, we don't test kindergarten students, this is just 1st and 3rd grade. And we consider 81% of our students scored in the average or above area. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to kind of dig through this data because it reports differently depending on the system that you're looking at, right? So there's 5 reporting categories up here, which sometimes can make it a little bit challenging to kind of how does this translate into PSSA, and then how does this all jive? 81% of our students were scoring average and above in math at the beginning of our school year. 68% average or above. So that's yellow, green, and blue. 68% average or above in reading. So as I already had alluded to earlier, in the last school year, I really was concerned about our attendance levels for kindergarten and 1st grade, but I'm keeping a close eye on it this year, and so is our building leadership team. So we have already in September come out with better numbers in our attendance area for kindergarten and 1st, which was a sigh of relief for me. And then ELA, we did talk a lot and went round and round about focusing on vocabulary acquisition and use, although that was our lowest standard scoring area. It was not weighted heavily on the PSSA. Although it is a moving target, how it's weighted every year changes, but historically it has not been weighted very heavily. Same thing with numbers and operations and fractions, not weighted as heavily as measurement data on the math PSSA assessment. So what we decided to do was to focus on key ideas and details in literature text, and then this is our breakdown. So we're currently 80% proficient, and looking at our reporting categories from that achievement anchor, and we're looking at growing our highest students from 19%, falling in the high category to 25%. And then our building level goal for mathematics is to focus on measurement and data, specifically translating data from one type of display to another. That was a new learning for some of our teachers when we actually went into that standard. I walk into a lot of classrooms and I see kids analyzing tally charts, bar graphs, and tables. However, the 3rd grade standard asks you to translate data from one type of display to another. So that's what I'm talking about, that those are the discussions when you actually look at the standard and get to see that in a classroom, that's what takes it to the next level. How can kids translate it from one type of display to another? So moving our students from 71% in the medium or high to 80% of our students to the medium or high category in this particular anchor area. I could go on and on about improvement strategies that we have already, and you've heard me talk, and you have heard Jeff talk about our standards-based report card system, which we're implementing in KN1 and next year too, which we're already working on too. It's in all areas really, but that's not up on here, but to have our teachers ensuring that they're teaching the standards and that we are assessing the standards that they are teaching has been great work for our teachers and our core team to really dive into that. You heard me talk last year about learning walks. We were able to get that off the ground, and we're going to continue to look at that this school year. We spend a lot of time working on root cause analysis, and Jeff and I are both very passionate about, as we already said, making sure that all students are reading on grade level by 3rd grade. We also have progress monitoring protocols that are in place for the building, for our grade level goals, for our classroom goals, and our individuals. So we're progress monitoring individual kids. I can pull up a student who is in red here, not in kindergarten yet, but in 1st grade right here, I can pull up any of those 17 students, and I can tell you what their goal is, and I can tell you how they performed on their latest progress monitoring protocol, and then what the teacher's instructional plan for that child is. So that's been a lot of work our teachers have put into learning and doing that, but it's definitely time well spent.
And don't forget that the child is tracking that data as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. We're coming along. You're a little bit further ahead of us in that area though. Our instructional leadership team spends a lot of time resource sharing. We also talk in PLCs every week, which is, we have more time to meet in PLCs, which is great. Thank you. But how really pulling up a standard on the whiteboard, on our whiteboard, and saying, what does this standard say? How do we assess it? What does the instruction look like? What does mastery of that standard look like? And then how do we differentiate it for students who need more help in that area, for students who are right on target, and then for students who might want to push a little bit farther ahead and enrich them. And we do a lot of data analysis of our SWIFT, which is our behavior data, attendance data, which I've already talked about, and academic data on a monthly basis in our building leadership teams. And that's really it. Any questions about Marlboro?
I don't think it can be understated how impressive Marlboro's data, PSSA data in particular, is. I wish I could say that we're going to end the show with the same impressive data as them. However,
But at least you've got handouts that are
right,
in
well,
color.
and here's the thing, my peers are not happy.
Encourage him.
My peers are unhappy with me about
I
this.
see that, I could feel it, yeah.
But they were giving me a hard time earlier about not being able to see the size, so I said, well, we're gonna have to fix that. So, and one also loves being, I think I'm slides 60-something through 70-something in a presentation, so thanks, appreciate it, everyone. So, if you wouldn't mind, thank you, Dr. Ferdy.
Just FYI, this morning, we were going first.
Berks County always gets forgotten, that's all I'm saying.
That's it.
All right, so this is, this packet is actually what I'd like you to pull out first, which is actually second in your field here, so, okay? So what I want to point out here is, you know, again, we're going to go through some of the same stuff that everybody else is going through. You know, you see this red arrow when it comes to ELA, it means that we grew. We grew our students, but we didn't grow at the rate, that interim goal rate. We'll talk about that. Math, we flatlined. We did not move at all. And then as we move over to that attendance side of things, similarly to Marlboro, we struggled last year. We'll talk a little bit more about why that might be, right? So here we are. We take a look at our PSSA data. And I'm going to actually put a pause on this because I want to bring this to your attention right here. And again, we'll talk about why I have this in a moment. But basically, this right here, that first slide gives you some of the background about Herford. Who are we? We're a school of about 535 students, which has increased. About 30 more students than we had at the end of the year last year. 535 students. We also have, if you look, it says economically disadvantaged. It says 35 or 38.8. That was last year. The fresh set of data is now we're at 44% of our students are free and reduced lunch. The comparative data, if you look at the last slide, back when I was here in 2015, we had a similar workbook to this, and I just printed this main page. You'll see that it was around 29% prior, during the 2015 school year. So you can see that increase in the free and reduced category at Herford Elementary School. We also are privileged to have the 2 autistic support classrooms at the K-3 level. We have a K1 class, and we also have a 2 and 3 class of autistic support students. Fantastic kids and an amazing team of teachers that wrap around those kids each day. So throughout this, you're going to see me hopefully come back to the ideas of academics, behavior, and attendance. Because yes, academics is what we're here for, but if we're not addressing behavior and attendance issues, then we're never going to get to where we need to be. So when you see our data here, I just want to point out why do we have this workbook. If you go to the second slide and you look down to the PSSA data, you'll see the English language arts reporting category, slide 2 there, by reporting category, I should say. You can see that our kiddos, and again, I was just at a presentation, by the way, where I was using the term kiddos, and somebody called me out on that. So if I say
Talent chart for
kiddos, yell at
tonight.
me, all right? It's students. What you'll see, actually, it's up in slide 1, is the PSSA data from 2018 to 2023. And it's sort of backwards. So if you look at it, all the way on the right-hand side, in that bar, we were all the way up at 63%, and then over the next successive years, we were seeing a decrease, a slow decrease, until, obviously COVID times. We bumped up a little bit more last year. But from a reading standpoint, yes, we're sitting at 55.9, but that's a 10% increase from the previous year in reading. This was my first year back at Herford, so right around PSSA time was a little more than a year of me being back. And reading did take a heavy focus for us last year. That was a big focus, and our math specialists this year continue to remind me how they're happy that we're now focusing a little bit more on math as well. So we are at 55.9 or 56%, but again, that is a 10% gain from the previous year. Again, we flatlined in math, and that again is a focus, and we'll be talking about that as we move forward. This goes back to that state idea of what is our ultimate goal at Herford Elementary School, and then what are the interim targets to get us there. So if I can do this correctly, yeah, I can. So if you take a look here with math, we're sitting at 43%. We should have been at 54, but you see it's about a point or two every year until you get to 2033. Now, we're not obviously satisfied with we can't make a point or two. So you'll see that our goals are focused more on making at least 5% growth, an ambitious goal of 10%. Same thing here. Again, this is the state's expectation where we should be. This is where we are right now. We made that 10% growth. Can we keep doing that? We're going to keep pushing. All right? You take a look at that attendance. Again, we talked about that. I don't necessarily believe we need to go back there. This is something that we meet again, just like in Mrs. Stevens' school. We meet as a team. We look at that student data. The other thing is it's not just whole days of absences. It's a trend of drop off and picking up early. So missing portions of the day as well. That's something that needs to be addressed at our school. So as a school, what do we do? You've heard Ms. Stevens talk about this isn't just a principal thing, this is a team. So back in August 3rd to be exact, I met with my academic leadership team. They came in middle of their summer and we said, okay, we need to take a deep dive into the data and we need to start building our plan together for where we're going next. So the first thing we took a look at is, hey, let's take a look at all the district initiatives that we have this year, because we need to make sure that we're aligning with what's happening in our school district. I was joking with Mr. Vigilante, usually we stand in front of our staffs at the beginning of the year and say, not much is changing. That wasn't this year. We have a lot of great initiatives this year, and we needed to say, okay, so what's aligning with what we're doing, and what are the things that we can kind of move to the side so that we can focus on what we need to focus on. The second step of that was this deep dive into this workbook. And as you see down at the bottom, this is something that we keep, our school improvement overview. We keep this. I can't open this for you right here and right now because it does have individual student information on it. Much of this information does come from Lincoln, but it also comes from other data sources, such as our Swiss database for behavior. It also goes into PA School climate survey data and those types of things that aren't necessarily in Lincoln. These are the the assessments that are important to us as a school, and each trimester we update this, and we're monitoring our student growth throughout the school year. So we took a look at all of those data points, many of which have been pointed out here today. And then we continued and said, okay, we need to go deeper. And that's what you have in front of you right now is our data dashboard. This is what we refined with that academic team on August 3rd and moving forward. And we presented to our staff on the first day of professional development. So again, you take a look at this, and I'm not going to go through each one of these slides. I'm just going to be pointing some things out. But remember, we used to be a school of almost 900 students, right? And take a look at some of these trends. Right? So things like office managed disciplinary referrals, 388 2 years ago. That's almost 2 every school day of the principal having to intervene with disciplinary issues, not the teacher. OSS, that's school suspension and school suspension. Again, attendance issues. This was from a school of 900. This is from a school of 500. So you see that increase. And again, there's just some other some other data as well. So what I'd like you to do is, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to see if I can move us forward here a little bit faster. But you can see a lot of the data sets in your packet right there. But if you would go to slide 6. So if you see at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the slides, and you can take a look at this with me. So like Mrs. Stevens was pointing out here, there we go. This is what I'll have you do. So I want you to take a look at that, but I also want you to look at the first page of this. We have 3 separate pages. This page right here is for academics. That's what this is all about. These are our reading and math goals right here. As you look up at the top, it says aligned concern, systemic challenges. Those don't come from me. Those come actually from the state of Pennsylvania. Having been where I've been in the past, as a full-on Title I school in the past, you have to write a school improvement plan for the state of Pennsylvania. And that school improvement plan is a very specific process, and so we continue to follow that process. I continue to follow that process because it helps really drill down from, so what are our bigger issues, but then what are our systemic challenges, and then what specifically are our concerns? So we work to identify those, specifically in PSSA, DIBELS, and MAP. And then we're saying, okay, so what are we doing about it? What are we doing from a core instruction and assessment standpoint, and what's our action plan? And this is for reading. Just to boil it down for you, if you look on the right-hand side here, these are some of the things that we're doing a little bit differently this year. We've revised our master schedule at Herford Elementary School so that every single teacher is meeting with their 2 lowest groups in reading and math every single day, right? We have revised, and again, thanks to our board, a second PLC. That gives the teachers the opportunity to continue to drill down on our students and their academic data. So I attend one PLC with my academic leadership team every week, and then the teams meet by themselves to further that conversation on another day that week. We've included something called benchmark data sheets. So in reading and math, what we're doing is we're able to have all of our students by grade level, similar to what Mr. Amsler was talking about they're doing at the high school, and it drills it down to not just the benchmark data. We benchmark our kids 3 times a year, once in reading and math. And that happens in September, it happens in January, February, and it happens at the end of the year. Our problem at Herford was that we didn't have anything going on in between to sort of dipstick and say, how are these kiddos growing on these benchmark assessments? So we always did for reading with our lowest readers and our lowest kiddos in math because they were going to intervention and they were being progress monitored twice or once every other week. But it wasn't happening for those kids that weren't getting intervention, those kids who are on the cusp, those kiddos that need that push. Can't believe how many times I use the word kiddo. So what we're doing differently this year, is that those children are being benchmarked, are being progress monitored every other week. So we are tracking that data, color-coded spreadsheet that tells us red, yellow, green. Is this yellow student now moving towards green and blue? If they are, great. If they aren't, then what are we doing about it? And we're doing that every other week. We're able to take a look at it, and it's what our conversation is in our PLC. We're doing this for reading and mathematics, DIBELS and Acadians, both. Why, you might say? DIBELS is the foundational benchmark of reading. It tells us if a child is ready to read. Math, same thing with Acadians. So we're drilling down to that level. Those benchmark data sheets, by the way, we'll be keeping them throughout the entirety of the school year. Not only are we keeping that data, but we're now asking our students to also map their data. So when they did their benchmark, they have their graph, they fill it out. This is where I am. And then as we progress monitor, they're filling it in as well. And we've already seen some great, we're just a couple of weeks into this, but we've already seen some good, want to sit down, I want to get to this right away because I know that I did better this time. So, again, we're seeing some really good early returns with
What
that.
about the kids that aren't improving? Like, how do you work with that?
So, for those kiddos who aren't improving, just like Mrs. Stevens was saying, it's our job then to drill down to why. So with Dibbles, if it's I'll tell you, this year, our letter naming fluency, kiddos that are able to name letters, we had about 40% of our kiddos who could name less than 10 coming into kindergarten. So these are kids that we haven't had a chance to get to yet, right? So it's our job, but yet, so in Dibbles, there's the basics of letter naming, but it all goes all the way up to fluency, reading fluently. So we have to figure out where they're struggling in that continuum of reading. Is it their phonics? Is it their fluency? So that, and that's where we target that student's need.
We do a lot of diagnostic assessments to understand where they're using it.
Yeah, drill down, absolutely. Right. We have a new PLC template, which talks about a lot of the things that you've heard tonight, which is here is the standard, but then what does it look like before? What does it look like after, so that we're meeting the needs of all of our students? You know about our data meeting days, but they have become so much more refined. I was a part of the conversation today with Mrs. Bass, Mrs. Stevens, and Mr. Vigilante over at the 4-5 Center, and I just stood back and just thought what a conversation that was, the deeper level conversation that we were having about our data and our data days. Child study, for those students who then don't respond, we have a process where our teachers know that they can go and get help for students. They can go to our experts, our reading specialists, math specialists, to get help and support before it becomes a child study issue where we have to bring the team together and move from there. So that was, step one. So what are we doing differently? Those are many of the things that we're doing differently this year to target our individual needs. Any questions about that before I move on? The next then, and then this is all part of that last slide, which is, hey, we all, and it's not kiddos, all children win at Herford, right? So this year, again, students are tracking their data, and not only that, but their behavior data as well. One of the biggest things that we needed to do coming back to Herford through our PBIS was really clarify roles, re-empower our teachers to say, yeah, I support you. The student does something in class that's not acceptable, that needs to be corrected, we reteach. And if that student then continues to struggle, then there can be consequences implemented by the teacher. They need to be seen as the authority figure of the classroom as well, obviously. So as we move on, this is another part that I think that we're all doing. This isn't just a Herford thing, but I think this is something that we've sort of left out today, which is the SEL component, the social emotional learning component. Some of the things that we're doing at Herford is classroom-based plans. Every single teacher has a classroom management plan at the beginning of the year that I sat down with them and we walked it through. What are you doing in your classroom proactively to support your students? PBIS, which you know much about already, it's about teaching routines and expectations. We can't assume a kindergartner has ever been in a structured setting before. We can't assume that they've been, with 20 other students in a classroom. So we had to teach them the routines, everything from sharpening a pencil and getting a tissue without disrupting the entire class, to how to use the bathroom, how many times you pump the soap, and how many times you pull the lever. And yes, we even do it in third grade, yes.
I was going
Right.
to say, I have some employees that could use that.
How about it? How about it? Yes. Everything I learned in kindergarten, right? So anyway, second step, that of course. Now, this is another piece that I would like to point out to you. If you continue in this presentation here, in the paper, if you look at slide 10, you'll see that comparison of disciplinary referrals. Because our concern last year in PBIS was, wow, we had more than 1,000 disciplinary referrals. That's teachers entering data into a system or on a piece of paper 1,000 times about student disciplinary issues. If that's happening, then how are they planning? How are they pulling off solid instruction if they're doing that all of the time? So we set a goal last year and said we're going to drop that significantly, and we did. We can do better. But you can see, again, slide 8, you can see that difference.
What did you do to
A lot of yelling and screaming. No, what we did was, again, part of that was re-empowering the teachers, saying, yes, you at the classroom level, you have go from there. One of the other things that we found, though, we worked with the folks from the IU very closely. And they looked at it and said, what is this? There are some students that have more than 10, 15, 20 referrals in the system. That's not what this is for. If you have a kiddo that has more than 5, and it is October, then just like from an academic sense, we better be drilling down to find out what's going on and intervening. That's what we need to stop listing things and writing kids up. We need to figure out what the problem is, so we need to get together as a team, wrap ourselves around the teacher, wrap ourselves around the student, find what that root cause is, and intervene. So that's, I think, a large part of it is intervening, getting plans in place for those students and moving forward.
Do you guys do restorative justice at all?
So I've personally been trained in restorative, but this coming, the 7th, is it the 7th of November, we're all getting responsive classroom training. All of our students, all of our teachers, I should say, and staff will be trained.
Secondary.
Yeah. So again, as we keep going here, again, responsive classroom is there. The SEL screener. Again, this right here is something that we're all learning as we do it. But this is something that we've instituted this year as a school district, and we're able to, again, look at student data in a different way. We're getting teachers' input from the screener, and then we're able to plan based around that. And we're going to continue to learn more about that. Our data meeting days, again, include this, looking at the behavioral data as well, and moving from there. I put down here, don't forget the magic. That's because, we work at the elementary school, and sometimes we forget we're working with 5-year-olds, right?
Yes.
It's okay that they think Mr. Freeze can see every corner of the building, right? The great eyes.
Do you have
right?
eyes in the back of your head?
I do. It's okay. And, I think we forget that sometimes, and it's just a good reminder. So again, you can see the systemic challenges, according to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, they give you a whole list of them. We narrowed it down to those. We said, these are our concerns, and we went from there. If you go to, and again, you see some perceptual data in there, but if you would go to slide 15, this is PA School Climate Survey data. And what we found is quite interesting. This is 3rd graders at Herford from last year's cohort, saying what they were struggling with. And what's interesting is a number of 3rd grade students self-reported that conflict resolution was an area they struggled with, and so was anger management. Our teachers took the same survey, and guess what? The teachers, same indicators, same concern.
Too much social media.
So, but what do we do at the school? What do we do then with that? What do we just look at it and say we don't do anything? What we've asked our school counselors to do is to run more tier 1 lessons, so whole group lessons for groups of students that are focused on conflict management or conflict resolution and anger management. We have asked our teachers to prioritize in our SEL curriculum some of those lessons. And I know, hey, bullying is your thing.
That's like all
So,
people skills stuff.
So, correct. And you know what? They're right. You can see these kiddos that are struggling with the ability to take that deep breath, to think it through, and then make a decision instead of just going right for it. Again, and we're seeing it pay off. We're seeing the work and that focused work pay off with whole groups, with our small groups. But bullying is another one that was indicated by our 3rd graders. And don't get me wrong, bullying happens. It does. But what we know about bullying is it is the imbalance of power, so it's either mental or physical. It is over time. And what we do know is we intervene when those things happen. We know what bullying is. What we're finding with some of our students, or what we were finding last year and this year, is they identify that shove on the playground as a bullying incident. Or that one time, that kiddo yelled at them because you stepped on my foot or something. I'm being facetious. But at the same time, they didn't know or don't know the genuine definition of what bullying is. So that's been our focus as well, which is if you have kiddos reporting bullying, but it's in fact not bullying, then you're not going to get to the real cases, the real issues that need to be examined. Any questions about the SEL portion of this?
No, that's great.
All right, and then the final page that you're going to find there is more me. So what am I doing? What's the principal doing that's different? And in that page, what you'll find is, I think the district requires formal observations every 3-4 years. I'm doing them every other year. So in other words, I'm doing formal observation every other year of my staff at this point. And what's my focus this year? Mathematics is my focus this year. That's where I'm going in and focusing on that instruction that's happening there. The other piece of this is that you'll see is, again, everything alignment has been a big conversation at Herford Elementary School. So if, our focus is on math, if our focus is on reading, then so should every one of our goals, including our LEA selected measures, how we're measured as professionals by the state of Pennsylvania. Yeah, one of the other things that I just wanted to tease out is we do have what we call a solutions network at Herford, which is a series of small groups or committees that meet at least once a month. We have a special ed roll call, which meets once a month with Carol and Amy, which is fantastic to have them there. We had this morning our leadership council meeting, which is our leadership team meets together as a representative group of teachers who makes decisions for the school, across the school. We have a PBIS team that meets every month, examines the data together, makes determinations on how we're going to change things to improve student behavior. And we have a safety council, again, things like crisis go and those types of things. So we have it's really important to me that we have a lot of voice, not just teacher voice, but staff voice as well. In the decisions that are being made at Herford Elementary School every day. So that's kind of where we are. One of the other things I just want to point out too is our local preschool program partnership, which we started last year. We're going to continue this year. I think that has gone a long way to preparing our local preschools with understanding what kindergarten looks like. And we spent time where they came to us, got to visit our classrooms, both at Marlborough and Herford. They also we had the opportunity to go see them. And I think it's gone a long way to opening, especially after COVID, opening back that relationship. All right. Anything else? Any questions? I know this is a little bit of a different take, but when you're working with kindergartners, and it's not all about PSSA data, when you're working with first grade.
That was a lot of stuff for me.
Obviously, a lot of great information here tonight. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that at this time? Okay, of course, if you do, you can bring them up at the next Educational Program and Services Committee meeting, which will be in January.
I just have a.
Sure, yes, no, please.
Just a general question for the building administrators. And you don't have to answer it now, you can think about it, but what do you need? What do you need from the board? What do you need to support your efforts? And, like I said, I don't need an answer now, but, we gotta keep moving in the right direction. So you gotta tell us what you need to get there. Again, it's the same thing now, but just, and if you wanna pull one of us aside, whenever you see us, anytime, have a chat, just, so that's all I have.
Don't be afraid to be an advocate. Okay, anybody else? Any other final comments from anyone present?
I would just say that thank you very much. This is all fantastic information. I find it extremely valuable, and one of the, I think I say at the end of every one of these meetings, this is my favorite committee because I think I learn the most. But maybe, we won't be here for it, but how can we make it in the future that we can spend an appropriate amount of time on this sort of thing and make sure everybody gets, because I feel like we could probably talk for a lot longer, and I don't know that you guys would want to do that, but as a board, I think we would like.
Is it something that maybe we'd want to, and obviously we appreciate everybody being here tonight and taking time
Yeah.
out, but is it something maybe we want to
Split.
break out over 2 meetings maybe?
Yeah, yeah, I
Just-
mean, and we've gone from,
No offense.
No, it's because it's good.
no, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you can see elementary, while they're all important and build on each other,
Yep.
the data and the work looks very different. They have a lot of different diagnostic information, and they're dealing with a lot of different school variables that, you know, that come into play when making school improvement recommendations. So, I think that we could, do an October, the issue becomes when we collect the data, right?
Okay.
When do we want to give and afford the teams at the building, so October was always the soonest, so, but we could do elementary and then secondary.
In November, or like
So
October, November.
we've never had a November meeting.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if we want to pursue it to split it like that, then we could, I'm at the will of the
Yeah.
committee.
It's just something to think
I mean,
about.
something for you guys
It's
to think
long,
about for
and
next
it's a
year.
lot.
It is, it is, but it's important,
Yeah.
and,
Unless you did it like over 2 nights.
right, 2 weeks, or
So
2
it's not
weeks.
too far away.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I was thinking as well,
the
yeah.
same month, but 2 meetings.
You can do that, like a Wednesday and a Thursday or something. I mean, as
Or
long
just
as
2
it
weeks of Wednesdays.
works,
You know
or
what I
2
mean?
weeks of
Yeah.
Wednesdays or
Yeah.
Thursdays or.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, and then families, if they want to come here, secondary, not elementary, they could.
You know, I'm not gonna be here, so why don't we do it every night for a while?
No, every building gets a meeting.
No, I was, to echo Emily's comment, a lot of hard work goes into this, so thank you, administrators, for all that you do, and for taking time out to be here tonight with us, and for, to dive into these things for those in attendance who are still here.
Missing
Thank you.
Phillies game.
Missing the Phillies game.
So-
And for those watching at home, this is to Emily's point. I mean, you're right. This is the meat and potatoes right here of the
Yeah,
committee.
this is it.
Really
This
is.
it. This is what it's all about.
Yeah. So we don't have a meeting until January, so that'll be on the schedule at some point. As this is my last meeting as the chair of this committee, I want to thank you all. I really like being on this committee a lot, and it's taught me a lot for sure, so thank
Mike, you
you
can
to all you
keep
guys.
coming to the meetings.
Yeah, you can come all the time.
Absolutely, of course. Yeah, exactly. Can I come back and talk?
Sure.
No.
Yeah, all right. So, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
Well,
Can I ask a question before we go? I'm so sorry.
Jesus.
I asked for questions.
I just remembered I had a question. That was like hours ago, I forgot. So can I just ask a question about dual enrollment? And I don't really know a lot about it. So can kids take like one class dual enrollment, or 2, or 3, or 15, or whatever?
So we have an agreement with Monco, and we have a number of courses that are approved, the curriculum is approved as dual enrollment. They're taught by our teachers who are also approved by Monco. So the teachers have to have a master's in that content, specific content area.
So and I'm sorry, I'm keeping
Do you
everyone
want,
sorry.
you want me to stick around for a minute afterwards?
Oh,
No, I just wondered, and I'm
Mike's
Oh,
like,
we'll let them go.
that's a wonderful idea.
oh, stop. I just wondered, I don't know a lot about that, and I've had a couple people ask me questions about it, and I don't really know anything about it. So I just wondered, I thought maybe.
I mean, I know that there are-
know that.
There are a couple courses that offer dual enrollment, just because I know that Parker's been offered a couple opportunities for that. The one that pops right into my mind is German.
Rob, do you know how
does
many
it-
kids are enrolled?
Yeah, that one.
I can get that, I don't know that off the top of my head, but personal finance, so the students are in the class here. Personal finance is a perfect example of it. It's a mandated course now. We have a lot of kids taking the course, but they have to commit to paying
Yes.
and going through the college. Not everybody does that.
Nope.
So we have French 1 and 2 that are also doing enrollment approved. We don't have we're trying to recruit kids to take it, we don't have the magic number to do it.
Okay.
And the terms sometimes get confused, Melanie. There's dual enrollment and there's concurrent enrollment. So concurrent enrollment means you're enrolled in a high school while you're enrolled in college and earning credit at both. So when our kids take it through Monco, it counts credit for us and it counts credit for Monco. Kids can also take credits at a community college in the summertime, and that's not dual or concurrent. They're just taking it and earning credits. They might be able to carry over onto a college transcript at some other point in time. So it has to be, for us, concurrently enrolled to earn the credit in both areas, and that is where our teachers have to be approved.
Okay, all right, I can live with that for now. Okay, go ahead. Finish.
Any other questions? Oh, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Discussion, hearing none, all those in favor say